Years of consistent training, same chest, same shoulders, same back. That's not a dedication problem. That's 4 specific mistakes running in the background of every session you think is working. Here's what they are. Mistake 1. Training the same angles every single week. The bench press, the bent over row, the shoulder press. Same movement, same angle, same grip, same range every week for months, sometimes years. The muscle stopped responding, not because it got too strong, because the nervous system learned the pattern completely and stopped recruiting new fibers to execute it. Here's the mechanism. Motor learning and hypertrophy share the same nervous system, but they work in opposite directions for training purposes. The first time a movement is performed, the nervous system works hard to coordinate it. Unfamiliar pattern, high neural demand, significant muscle fiber recruitment. As the movement becomes automatic, as the nervous system masters the coordination, the neural demand drops. Less effort required to produce the same output, which means fewer fibers recruited per session, which means less hypertrophic stimulus per session. The man who has been flat benching the same way for 2 years isn't training his chest. He's executing a mastered motor pattern with reduced neural recruitment and wondering why the stimulus that built muscle in the first year stopped building it in the third. The fix isn't changing the exercise, it's changing the angle. Incline press shifts load to the upper pectoral fibers and anterior deltoid, fibers the flat bench chronically underloads. Decline press increases stretch on the lower pectoral at the bottom of the movement, a position flat bench never reaches. Neutral grip dumbbell press changes the shoulder position entirely, recruiting the chest through a slightly different arc that the barbell version can't replicate. For the back, switching from overhand bent over row to underhand grip changes the lat recruitment pattern. Adding a single-arm dumbbell row with full range of motion and a deliberate pause at the top introduces a stretch-shortening stimulus the bilateral barbell row structurally prevents. This isn't programming complexity, it's introducing a signal the muscle hasn't fully adapted to yet. The muscle isn't stubborn, it's bored, and bored muscles don't grow. The next mistake is the one that happens inside every set. In the final reps, most men never actually complete. Mistake 2. Stopping before the muscle actually fails. Most men stop sets when they get hard. That's not failure, that's discomfort, and there's a significant physiological gap between the two. Here's what's happening in the final reps of a set that most men never reach. The muscle recruits fibers in order. Type 1 first, Type 2 last. Type 1 fibers are smaller, fatigue-resistant, lower hypertrophy potential. Type 2 fibrils are larger, fatigue faster, highest hypertrophy potential. The fibers with the greatest capacity for growth are the last ones recruited, and they only get fully recruited when the fibers before them are already exhausted. Stopping a set when it feels hard means stopping before Type 2 fibers have been fully challenged. The fibers with the most growth potential were recruited and then immediately released before the stimulus reached the threshold required to trigger adaptation. For men over 40 with anabolic resistance, this isn't a minor inefficiency. The threshold for hypertrophic stimulus is already higher than it was at 25. The muscle requires more signal to respond, not less. Stopping 3 reps short of failure on every set, every session, means the signal never reaches the receptor consistently enough to produce growth. True muscular failure looks specific. The next rep is physically impossible with correct form. Not uncomfortable, not burning, impossible. The bar stops moving, the range collapses, the body has nothing left for that pattern and that load. That's the rep that matters most, and most men never get there. The practical correction, at least 1 set per muscle group per session taken to true technical failure. Not every set, recovery cost is real, but 1 set per group per session where the last rep is the last possible rep, not the last comfortable one. The man who has been training for years without ever reaching true failure on a single set hasn't been training at the threshold where his muscle grows. He's been training in the comfortable zone just below it and getting comfortable zone results, which is to say, none. The third mistake isn't about how hard the sets are, it's about how many there are, and why the number most men are hitting is below the threshold where growth actually begins. Want a strong and healthy body? Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button.
Mistake 3. Weekly volume below the hypertrophy threshold. Most men training 3 days a week in a muscle group split are doing 6 to 8 sets per muscle group per week. The research threshold for effective hypertrophy stimulus is 10 to 12 sets minimum. That gap, 6 sets versus 12 sets, is the difference between maintenance and growth, not optimization versus sub-optimization. Maintenance versus growth. The muscle isn't building, it's holding what it has and slowly losing even that as the years accumulate. But here's where it gets counterintuitive. The solution isn't simply adding sets, it's adding sets at the right intensity. And that distinction is where most men make the correction wrong. 20 sets of upper body work per week sounds like serious volume. If those 20 sets are stopping 3 reps short of failure with weight that's comfortable at angles the nervous system has fully adapted to, those 20 sets deliver less hypertrophy stimulus than 12 sets taken to true failure with varied angles and progressive load. Volume without intensity is just fatigue accumulation. It taxes the recovery system without delivering the signal the muscle needs to respond. For chest specifically, 10 to 12 sets per week minimum, distributed across 2 sessions, at least 1 pressing angle per session that isn't flat barbell, at least 1 set per session taken to true failure. For back, the same volume minimum, with at least 1 vertical pull, lat pull down or pull up, and 1 horizontal pull, row, per session in different grip positions across the week. For shoulders, 10 sets minimum, with overhead pressing and lateral raise work both present. The deltoid has 3 heads. Training only the anterior, which is what every pressing movement already covers, leaves the lateral and posterior heads chronically understimulated. The width and roundness of the shoulder that men over 40 associate with a younger, more athletic physique comes from the lateral head. 3 mistakes corrected: angle variation, true failure, adequate volume. The 4th mistake isn't in the gym at all, and it may be undoing everything the first 3 corrections just fixed.
Mistake 4. Missing the post-training window after upper body sessions. This mistake happens after the gym, which is exactly why most men never connected to the results they're not getting inside it. Upper body training, chest, back, shoulders, traps, recruits a significant fraction of total body muscle mass in a single session. The post-training demand for amino acids is proportionally high. The muscle tissue that was just stimulated needs raw material to repair and grow, and it needs it within a specific window, where the body's capacity to use that material is at its peak. That window is 30 to 45 minutes post-training. Resistance training acutely elevates muscle insulin sensitivity. The tissue becomes maximally receptive to glucose and amino acids uptake. That sensitivity is highest immediately after the session and begins declining within the hour. In men over 40, that decline happens faster than it did a decade ago. The window that was forgiving at 30 is narrow at 45. The man who finishes an upper body session, drives home, showers, checks messages, and eats a mixed meal 90 minutes later isn't eating wrong. He's eating at the wrong time and arriving after the window that would have directed amino acids directly into muscle protein synthesis. Has already partially closed. 30 to 40 grams of whey isolate within the first 30 minutes post-training is the most documented, most practical protocol for closing this gap. Whey isolate specifically, not concentrate, not a mixed meal, not chicken an hour later. The absorption speed matters. Whey peaks in the bloodstream in 60 to 90 minutes, landing directly inside the window where the muscle is most receptive. The pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, deltoids, and trapezius together represent a substantial portion of the body's total muscle mass. After a high-intensity upper body session, that tissue is primed for growth, but only if the substrate arrives in time. 4 mistakes, 4 corrections. The upper body that hasn't changed in 2 years wasn't limited by effort. It was limited by what the effort was missing. What did you think of this video? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. I actually read everything. Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button.